And oh, there we go. Did you see that? Beautiful dry fly take on the Parachute Adams. Well, I'm here at my favorite trout stream today, and this is the place where I learned, where I started fly fishing. I thought it would be a good place to share some advice for those that are starting out fly fishing. So if you're beginning your fly fishing journey, there's a lot of fun to be had, but also a lot to learn. Now this is the sort of place where a lot of fly fishers start out. Small streams, close to where you live probably, with trout, often frequented by lots of people as well. Maybe bouldery, maybe gravelly stream, but this is the sort of place that you're likely to start, and that's why I wanted to start by explaining how to fish these waters and what you need. Now, one of the first things you're going to come across is deciding what style you're going to be fishing. Now, something that's really popular these days is Euro nymphing, and yes, I Euro nymph. It is very effective, and I guess it can be easier to learn. But one of the warnings I'd give with starting off Euro nymphing is that you're not going to learn to fly cast. Now, casting a fly line is fundamental to the majority of styles of fly fishing, except Euro nymphing. So if you only learn to Euro nymph, you're going to be limiting yourself to that. It's going to be very hard for you to just pick up any fly rod and do whatever. If you want to go bone fishing in the flats, if you want to go fish in a still water, if you want to swing streamers, if you want to learn to cast a spey rod, all those things require the fundamentals of fly casting. And if you're just Euro nymphing, you will have some skill in casting, but you're not really going to learn to cast a fly line properly. So that's probably the first thing I'd say, is start with a fly rod, a fly reel and fly line, and learn to cast a fly line rather than starting Euro nymphing. And that's why I'm not going to cover Euro nymphing in this, simply because I don't think as a beginner that's where you should be starting. And if you do, it's a bit of a different skill set, so I will cover that in another video, the Euro nymphing of this sort of water. So let's move on. Now let's talk about gear. As I said, a regular fly rod, regular fly reel and a fly line. Now you can get really bogged down into gear and what gear and the best gear and all sorts. When you're starting out, it's best to stick with entry-level and mid-range rods. The high-end rods often tend to be very fast action, and that can be very hard to learn to cast. It's a bit like, you know, jumping into a Ferrari and going around a racetrack. You need the real good driving skills to be able to handle a car like that. So just think about that. Fast action rods is probably also not greatly suited to this. These small streams and small waters, I prefer a medium or slower action rod, and I even sometimes overline it a little bit because I'm doing a lot of short casting. And what happens with fly casting is your fly line is what you use to load the rod in to be able to cast. And normally your fly line is rated for the first 30 feet of your line, and that's the weight to cast the rod. But if you're casting a short distance, you don't have much line out to load the rod. So if your line is a little bit overlined, you'll actually be able to cast a lot easier with a lot less line out the tip. And that can be quite handy for small waters like this, where you are really just casting right in front of you. I'm using a floating line. In this case it's weight forward. Some people still use a double taper if you're just going to use dry fly, but the majority of lines are weight forward, and you get a huge variety of lines. with a more aggressive tapers where you don't actually have to overline, but you can just have a more aggressive front taper, which is quite common in things like the Airflo power taper, I think it is, in their ridge lines. So that's an example of that. In rods, for a stream like this, you can go, depending on the trout size, you can go anywhere from a 1 weight through to probably a 5 weight. Might be a bit much for this, a 9-foot 5 weight. I prefer shorter rods. This is a 20-year-old 7'6" 3/4 weight. Now I have this because I actually don't have access to any of my other fly rods at the moment, and it kind of serves a point not to get bogged up in gear. I can fish with this 20-year-old rod and a click pull reel on this water quite happily, and an old fly line that I can't remember. It's probably one of the entry-level Airflo fly lines that I got with a rod at some stage. Can't even remember what weight it is. I can fish with this quite happily because it's quite fun on the small water, and I can really enjoy it. I could even go lighter. I would quite happily go to a 2 weight on this. Maybe 8 foot might be better. It's very subjective to what you like. And but something like a 5 weight, the fly line will land quite heavily over the water. A 6 weight, you'll be splashing around. It's not that you can't use it, but you know, it's getting pretty heavy for small water like this, especially when it's lower clear like it is at the moment. Reel, again, this is a standard click pull reel, also 20 years old. On small streams like this, where the trout size is on average pretty small, although there is bigger trout in here, you don't really need a reel with a massive drag, because you are hardly ever even going to get onto the reel. And even if you hook a big fish, it doesn't really have anywhere to go. It's going to go sit behind a rock or somewhere, and you're just going to have to be patient. It might run a bit downstream, but it probably isn't going to get you into the backing like on a big river, where you need a decent smooth drag to deal with big fish that run with the current and go places, or a lake where you can catch huge trout that will run you a distance and stuff like that. Click pull reel is fine here. You can hear it's old. It doesn't even sound right anymore. But don't get bogged down in gear is what I'm trying to say. You don't want to spend hundreds or even thousands if you don't have it. If you have it, by all means, buy the best gear you want or can. But if you're just starting out, you can get away with pretty much anything. The same with this. I love this waterproof hip bag. I've had it for quite some time now, but again, you don't need to go and splash out on all this stuff and a fancy net and a fancy backpack and all that stuff at the start. Although if you do have the money, a waterproof backpack and waterproof gear saves you frustration when you lose phones and cameras and stuff because you fell in the water. I love waterproof gear because I fall over a lot. I'm not wearing waders. In summertime, I don't really wear waders in water like this. I'll wet wade. I do normally wear wading boots, and the reason for that is it supports your ankles and they have very good grip. But I don't have my wading boots today. I don't have access to them. They're in another spot, and I have to use these, which are sandals. But they actually work surprisingly well because they are soft rubber. They're a Merrill, like a Merrill version of the soft, what do you call those things? Rubber things. But anyway, because they're soft rubber, they actually grip quite surprisingly well on the rocks, and they do offer, they're mostly fully enclosed, offer a fair amount of protection. I'm wearing socks with them because I don't like insect bites. So if you put insect repellent on your legs and stuff and you go in the water, it just washes off. So I'm wearing thermals underneath my shorts. It helps with scratches and stuff, and bramble and blackberry and stuff, and also prevents insect bites. Same, it's a little bit overcast and cooler today. I've just got a light waterproof jacket on. I've got a t-shirt and thermal long sleeves on underneath so that I don't get cold, and also so I don't get insect bites. In terms of other gear, flies. You need a fly rod, fly line, you need flies. And flies, the simplest way is get some nymphs in a variety of weights from really light to really heavy, and get a variety of dry flies, and get some dry flies in different sizes. Now, stick to tried and true patterns when you start. You can't go past the pheasant tail. If all you have in your box is size 18 to size 10 pheasant tails with different bead and weight sizes and weights, you'll catch a heap of fish everywhere with those. Anywhere in the world you can catch a heap of trout with pheasant tail nymphs. You can try, if you tie them yourself, you can tie different color beads and stuff, but you know, I have them in from no beads to 2 more beads to 2.5, and I fish with tungsten beads all the way up to 4 more beads, which is the max I use because I do some competition fishing. They're great flies, and I've seen them in almost every competition angler's box. Variations of pheasant tails are fantastic. So start with a bunch of different sizes and weights rather than getting the multitude of different patterns. Same with dry flies. Parachute Adams is a fantastic dry. Get them in different sizes, from small to big. That is a great, they sit well, they float well, they work well for dry dropper, and they're very generic. So trout will almost always take them if they are in the right size. Same with a Royal Wolf, great pattern. Alcaire Caddis is another great pattern. If you just have 2 of those in a variety of sizes, you'll catch the majority of fish. Some foam hoppers are great as well, good for dry dropper, good for summer when there's a lot of terrestrial insects on the water. That sort of stuff. A cicada pattern, if you have cicadas in your area. Don't overcomplicate the patterns. Get tried and tested, get them in a variety of sizes, and that's more important than having 100 patterns in your box, especially when you start. Now, there are places where fish get really honed in on very tiny and specific places where there's a lot of big hatches. But a stream like this, there's not a hatch on today. It's overcast. I'm just going to go and fish a dry dropper setup with a pheasant tail and a Parachute Adams is what I'm going to start off with, and I will change as necessary. So let me start and go fishing. Probably the easiest way to start fly fishing on a stream like this and improve your success is using a dry dropper setup. Now, I've got a great video that I'll link in the description that I explain how to tie the leaders and how to set it up, what flies to use, and all that detail, and how to fish it. So look at that, and that will show you the method I'm going to be using. Dry dropper is ideal for little streams like this. It covers nymphs on the bottom and dries on the top, and the dry also serves as an indicator that will help you to see when the fish takes the nymph. So it's a great way to start off when you're learning, and it's sort of the best of both worlds. Now, one of the things when you're starting to fly fish after you've learned to cast, which is probably the main thing I can recommend, is get some casting lessons. And oh, there we go. Did you see that? Beautiful dry fly take on the Parachute Adams. That's just why I love this. Oh, absolutely lovely. That's a great fish. Oh, what a start. First beautiful little piece of water. Nice rainbow came up for the dry. And we are straight into a fish. Well, I have no idea how I'm actually going to get this net off. I didn't think of that because I didn't have my net retractor. So hopefully I can get this net off. I might attach it at a different point next time. Right, so we can land this fish. Oh, perfect, beautiful rainbow trout. Lovely for the stream. Well, I might as well skip here to a section about one piece of gear that you do need, and that's a good net. I've got a rubberized net on here. The rubber is quite good for the fish's skin, so that's kind of important. You do want that. so that especially if you're going to be releasing a lot of fish, it really helps protect them and so you can release them healthy. There we go. Beautiful rainbow trout. Great way to start it. Let's get it away. So one problem you're going to end up a lot with is tangling. That's part of fly fishing. All I can say is pick your battles. Sometimes it's just better to start again and retie, and you'll only learn that with experience. But sometimes the process of untangling, even if you get it untangled, has damaged the tippet so badly that you are better off retying, otherwise you're going to lose a fish. So I managed to get that untangled. That's great. And you don't necessarily need very thin tippet either, because that can really tangle a lot more. I'm actually fishing with 4X, which is unnecessarily heavy for this. Oh, I can see a nice trout. It's going to come up for the dry. So they take the nymph. Oh, there's a nice trout in there. Oh, I think it looked at it. I'm not sure. Or did it drag? I'm not getting a great drift in there. I think it might be a brownie. And that's, I guess, another point to make. Think about polarized sunglasses. They do help quite a lot with seeing fish. And I can only see that fish because of the polarized sunglasses. It's not typical brownie behavior and brownie spot. If it was a rainbow, it probably would have come up for the dry or eaten the nymph by now. It hasn't been keen on doing either. I'm not getting the greatest of drifts. Let's see if we can get it to eat a nymph. Yeah, it's almost certain it's a brown. Now, that brings me to something you want to learn while I'm thinking about it, is trout behavior, and where in a stream trout are going to hold will help you to learn to see them better and help you to catch them blind fishing as well, because if you understand where they're going to be every time, you'll be able to fish a lot more efficiently. Now I think I'm not getting a good drift there. I'm going to move a little bit closer and try and high stick it so I get a better drift. Come on, am I just not getting better drift? But yeah, if you learn trout behavior, learn what they can see, and learn what they do when they spot you, for example, how their behavior changes when they are wary. Brown trout, for example, will just stop moving. They just sort of freeze in motion in the water. I can't see enough of that fish to see if that's already happened, but they are much less likely to eat after that. I do have to do a fly change here. So some trout are more finicky about what they will eat, and brown trout in particular can be quite finicky. So I'm just going to make too many changes here. You can, with a brown trout, persist for quite some time until they finally decide to eat something. But often I just go for something a little bit more. You can either go big, or you can go bright, or just something different if you've already thrown something like a pheasant tail. And sometimes something silly like a worm or an egg will grab their attention and they'll just grab it. But often you can spend ages and they will just eventually spook. So I'm not going to hang around here too long, although it is quite a nice fish. I won't stick around too long today to do this. I've made so many casts already that I don't think it's gonna take. Yeah, it's not showing signs of wanting to eat my fly. I don't have a great variety of stuff. Might try one more just to see if it'll eat something big. Sometimes they'll just eat something slightly bigger, but it might just be too aware of me here. Oh, it is a nice fish though. I would love to catch it. And it does, I see, what you often see with trout when they are feeding is you'll see the white mouth flashing. And I've seen that a couple of times, so it does seem to be feeding. Yeah, it's definitely feeding. I see the white mouth flashing, and that's often a positive sign that it hasn't spooked or anything. So I'm going to go, oh, that's a bit too heavy. I'm going to go with a rubber leggy thing and see if that works. A bit bigger. This is a size 12 or 10 by the look of it. No, it's size 10. Rubber legged fly. And it's probably a bit heavy for here, but it's a short drift, so hopefully it won't just go straight to the bottom and get stuck. And there's another point for you. Fly weight. If you're fishing nymphs, the most important part is very often the weight. Getting it to the right depth at the right time is often very much more important than the pattern. Come on, Brownie. I would love you to eat that, but it's just not. Oh, I could spend quite a bit of time here and possibly eventually get it to eat, but it just doesn't seem to be wanting to eat. I've had quite a few good drifts through there now, and I just don't want to spend too long. Give it a few more casts. Yeah, so where you want the fly is, oh, that was interesting. Oh, it's weird, I think. Where you want the fly is right in front of the fish, depending on the fish's depth. Now, in a situation like this, where it's summer and the fish are willing to come up, like the rainbows especially, the depth you get the fly is not as important because they're willing to move for it. This trout is not willing to move for it, so I need to get that fly right in front of it, hence the slightly bigger, heavier fly. And I basically have to get it in front of it to get it to decide to eat that. And to be honest, I'm not a fan of persisting like this. If the trout doesn't want to eat the damn thing, just move on to another one. But it's such a nice fish, thought I'd give it a few shots. Anyway, I'll change back to my fly that I had before, because most of this you can see where I'm standing is only knee deep. A lot of it's only knee deep, so you don't want to go super heavy. And we'll see what we get. I'll change back to my fly. Now you may ask yourself, where do I learn all these fly fishing things? The first place you're already at, yeah, YouTube. You can find a lot of information on YouTube. There's some great videos. There's another fish on the dry. Awesome. Just love dry dropper fishing, man. It's so good. Little rainbow. Excellent. YouTube is a great start, and you can get a lot of information on fly fishing and gear, and there's a lot of channels and stuff. But there's some practical experience that you just can't get from YouTube. So something I highly recommend always is joining a fly fishing club. Nice little rainbow there. Cool. Like-minded people that already have the skills, know the spots, all those sort of things. It's a huge help learning from people that already know and that physical experience. There's also, if you have the budget, you can always hire a good guide and ask them, oh, there's another fish, to teach you, and this one is on the nymph, to teach you instead of just guiding you to catch fish, but to teach you instead, and get some references. And a good guide can teach you a huge amount in a day on your local water as well. That could be ideal, so that you learn your local water. Because one of the big things why I'm successfully catching fish here is I just know this stream very well. I learned here, I know where the fish are going to hold, I know what to expect, I know what flies are going to eat, and all of that comes with a lot of experience. And if you can get that experience from someone like a guide, that is a great way to do it. A lot of other options are something like a fly fishing clinic. There are often guides, or sometimes people are just fundraising for competitions and stuff, holding clinics. Another beautiful rainbow trout. Just look at that. Awesome. And they will teach you a huge amount of stuff in a short period of time. And that's really worthwhile sometimes, extremely worthwhile. My fly has been chomped. Oh, start with another one. It fell apart. I must have tied that poorly. Let's see. All my old stuff here, I don't even know where half my flies are. I've only got one of those small ones left. My fly boxes and everything is in another place, so I'm a bit stuck for what I can use. But that's often what you start off with. You just start and learn with what you have. When it comes to deciding what fly rod to buy, I always recommend that you think about your local waters first. What are you going to be fishing mostly? Is it going to be streams like this? Are you going to be fishing small water like this? Are you going to be fishing lakes most often? What are you going to be doing? Because that will determine what you should buy first. We're talking about these sort of small streams now, and as I said, I prefer shorter, sort of 8 foot, 7 foot 6, lighter rods in the 2 to 4 weight range for water like this. But if you're fishing for small brook trout and stuff like that, you can even go 1 or 2 weight or 0 weight or whatever you want. And if that's what you're going to be fishing with most of the time, don't try and do this. I'll try to buy an all-round rod. You can do everything. There is no such rod. The closest you'll get to that is a 5 weight. And if you have a mix of waters that you're going to fish locally, a lot of people start with a 5 weight or even a 4 weight, 9 foot rod. And that will deal with small streams like this. I also deal with bigger rivers. So a 9 foot 5 weight is a very common starting point with a floating line. And you add lines if you want to start lake fishing or streamer fishing. You can add different lines to that. If you're in a place where you only have streams like this size and smaller around, you're going to be fishing for small cutthroat and brook trout, get yourself a light 2-3 weight, and you don't have to worry too much, and you can really enjoy it. These things are so much fun to catch these small fish with. So yeah, see if we can get another one out of there. So if you're going to be fly fishing with dry flies, you'll learn that a dry fly doesn't stay dry, and nor does it start off dry. They get wet very easily if you don't treat them right. So the first thing I recommend is get yourself a rubber band, and you can hook the fly in there and play it like a guitar, and that shoots all the excess water off the dry fly and dries it out very efficiently. And then always start with and regularly treat your dry fly with floatant. Now you can get powdered floatant or you can get gel floatant, and I normally use a combination, but I don't have my powdered floatant here. I'll start off at the start by putting powdered and a little bit of gel depending on the material. If it's CDC, I won't put gel at all. If it's hackle, I will put a gel floatant like this first, and then progressively as I fish I will dry it out with a desiccant and floatant powder, and that really helps. So the problem with just a gel is it can clog up things like CDC and actually make it sink. So you've got to be very sparing when you apply it and make sure you don't clog up the material. And eventually during the day your dry fly is going to get so soaked that you just need to change the dry fly. So you do need to have a few of the same pattern and size to change it if that's the one that's working. So I've dried my dry fly, I've put the gel floatant on. What I don't want to do is put my gel floatant all over the tippet, so make sure you don't use the same hand to handle your nymph and your tippet as you use to put your gel floatant on, okay? You don't want to use these fingers you just use to put up and down your tippet below your dry fly, because you want that to sink. Now what you want to do, if you hook up your flies, I've got a tippet leader on here with a loop-to-loop connection to my fly line. That gets stuck in the tip of the rod very easily. So if you take your nymph and you hook that up on the top of your guides, you bring the line back, oops, it's hooked my finger now, and you put it behind the fly reel. Then you can roll up, wind up your line, and that fly line won't, if your leader is not too long, won't wind into the tip of the rod, and it makes it a lot easier to get the flies undone. So I don't know if you can see that, it's not in the tip of the rod. You can tighten it up, and yes, it won't go in there. Now what I've also done on my dry fly is on a dropper, and that can go loose and tangle quite a lot. I've actually hooked it up a little bit too far, but I normally put a little rubber band there. I'll hook it one down. I put a little rubber band so that I can then take my fly on the dropper, and this works very well if you've got a fly on the dropper, and hook it into the rubber band on the rod. And that way it doesn't fly around and tangle while you're walking. Now let's go to the next spot. Looks like a nice spot. Now don't underestimate how shallow and in small bits of water trout can sit, sometimes quite big trout. And you can also be surprised at just how deep a piece of water is that you didn't think was as deep as it is. It does happen quite a lot. As you can see here, I've got hardly any room to cast, and I'm just got the leader out and flicking it up. I'm just trying each spot as I go up where I think it might be likely a trout could sit, and I'm moving as quietly as I can, try not to scare the trout if there are any sitting in these shallow waters, and just covering water. And that's something you really want to do when you start off, to get to know where the trout are and where they'll hold in a particular piece of water. It's just fish it all. Don't walk around just to the pools that look brilliant, and there's often fish in places you wouldn't necessarily think there would be, but there can be some quite big trout in small bits of water. Ooh. Now this is where good footwear really helps. Good wading boots does help, so you don't slip and slide like I do here. It does make quite a difference. Ooh, it looks so likely I would have thought I was going to get one in here. Some great looking water, but sometimes you don't succeed and you gotta try somewhere else. So I like to fish my way up bits like this and just slowly work my way up. It can be really effective sometimes. Oh yep, there I had one. Missed it. I was too slow. I didn't see the dry go under, and I eventually felt it, but that's too late. I'm sure there must be a few more in here, but it's often surprising how many can be in places like this. That one's probably not going to have a go at it again. Alright, let's move on. Now it can be tempting to rush between pools like this So it just looks beautiful, and trout should be in there. But trout in these sort of pools, especially in streams that are fished quite a lot, can be quite tricky to catch at times. The trout might be semi-resident in these pools. Every angler that comes past is fishing to them. They've probably been caught before, and I just find that it's often quite hard to catch fish in these pools. Not that you can't, but this one is particularly deep, so if the trout aren't going to be coming up to my fly, I'm probably too deep now, and I'm not going to change my whole rig because the majority of what I'm going to be fishing isn't this deep pool. But if you are going to do stuff like this, if you don't get a fish, if you dry dropper through this pool, then it might be worth changing. I have caught many fish in this pool with the dry dropper. I'm not too worried in this situation that I won't, but it was just weekend, so there undoubtedly been someone fishing here this weekend. And the water is still and calm, and the fish have time to think about what they're doing. I like that fast riffly water with pockets quite a bit better. It's fun to fish. You're fishing close, and I don't find that you catch any less big fish in that water anyway. You've got to be a lot more accurate and careful in these pools than in that faster water to have success. See, all of this I would have thought should have caught something, but I haven't, and it's probably because I've spooked whatever's been in here. Chances are I will catch something in the head of the pool rather than in here. Right, let's see if we can get something out of this faster bit of the pool. Could bow an arrow into that under the trees, but probably just in disaster. Oh. Yeah, trees have arms. Get used to it in fly fishing. The one thing I can advise, whenever you have something like that happen, a tangle or something, just stop. Stop your rod, don't continue casting, and just slow everything down, because that will help you get it loose. That didn't go where I wanted it. Another thing I can highly advise is when you start learning to cast, learn to roll cast. It's a cast that you're going to use a lot. It's very, very effective for small tight spaces. You can learn all sorts of interesting versions of the roll cast and even little spay casting moves, and that will really help you quite a lot. There we go, right under that tree. That's a nice fish. We've got a nice fish here. Might even put this one on the reel. The reel does a great deal, but this is a good fish. It was right underneath that log. Typical. Try not to break it off. Nice fish for this stream. Ah, yes. He really wants to stay under that log, obviously. He's on the nymph. As you can see, this little rod and even the clicker reel is handling it quite easily. And I've got 4x tippet on here. The fish didn't have any issues deciding to take that. So you don't have to go huge and heavy in these streams. Majority of the fish aren't going to be huge anyway. It's awesome, cool fish. I'll just hold it up from here. That's a great fish for this size stream. Barbless hooks, can recommend. There you go, hope you can see that. I'll show it on here anyway. Lovely fish. There we go. I was fishing some quite overgrown bits before, but it can be better to start in more open streams like this when you're starting, just because you have less stuff to hook up on when you're starting, and that can be really helpful not to hook up on so much stuff when you're starting to fly fish. It can be really frustrating when you're constantly catching trees and stuff. Now what you're seeing me do here is I'm just fishing close. I'm keeping as much line off the water, because one of the big things that you want to learn, there's a nice fish, is how to control your drift. Because when you're fishing nymphs and dries, drag makes quite a bit of a difference, and that can really wreck your fishing. Oh, he's really taking me. He's going to take me downstream, is he? No, he's not going to. Come on, you're not going to do that, fish, are you? It's not that big. Come back up here. And yeah, so what I did there is I kept most of the line off the water, because that prevents drag, and it really helps your nymph get down, and it really helps you catch a lot more fish, for sure. Okay, we're doing well, Let's go on the nymph again. That's why I love this little stream. Beautiful fish, great fishing, good numbers, willing fish. There we go, another lovely rainbow. You need to learn to understand the currents and what happens in different parts of the river and how it affects your line and your drift. So that's probably the second most important part you can learn after learning to cast. Is mending your line, maintaining a drift, just line control in general. It's very important with fly fishing nymphs and dries, controlling your fly to drag as little as possible. Oh, there's a tree behind me. Sometimes it helps to look behind you. Just getting that drag-free drift, because you'll see in front of me here there's a current where I'm casting in now. There's a little slower current there, then it gets faster here. Then there's a soft spot in the middle there where I've just cast, where if I cast across that, this line will drag, and now it will drag my fly down. Whereas if I keep the line up out of the water, I can fish that soft spot without my fly dragging. And I can also go across to the other current and fish that. And that's where Euro nymphing is so effective, because Euro nymphing keeps the line off the water. But with this dry dropper setup, when you're fishing in close, you can have a similar effect. This is essentially the same principle as Euro nymphing when you're high sticking like this, keeping the line off the water. You just get a lot more sag, but you've got contact to the dry fly. And now I can go, because I do that, I can go across these currents and fish that current, which looks very likely to me, and potentially get a fish out of there. See, I've still got line on the water, but I'm keeping the majority off it so that I don't get such bad drag, and that gives me a good chance of getting a fish in there if there's one in there. And you'll see I don't fish very far away, but I can. The benefit of the fly line is if I wanted to fish further away on a big pool, I can easily do that as well. And as I said, by learning to fly cast first, I learn the fundamentals of fly fishing, which makes it possible to learn any method of fly fishing easily. Whereas if you just start Euro nymphing, you're just going to learn to flick it out. And you do learn some casting with the Euro nymphing, but if you have never cast a fly line, it's going to be of limited help. Whereas if you learn to fly fish first with a fly line, you will have a much easier time learning to Euro nymph as well. plus all the other methods. Okay, let's move on to another spot. There doesn't seem to be another one in here. Now, something that I've been doing today, which I don't actually like doing, but I'm doing it out of necessity for this stream, is I've been in the water a lot. Now, I can always recommend that where possible, stay out of the water. Trout have a lateral line, very sensitive to vibrations and stuff in the water, and it's very hard to walk in water where trout can't notice you approaching. So if you can, stay out of the water. It's just very hard to fish the stream without being in the water. So what I'm going to do here, because I don't want to spook everything by that tree, I'm just going to cast a bit further, try and get a gentle presentation, sort of hoping there'll be something, maybe a brown trout by that tree. Well, I am seriously missing my wading boots. Footwear is super important when fly fishing. There's a fish, excellent. It's really uncomfortable with these sandals, I must say. My ankles are getting nailed by rocks, and it's slippery. Oh, that one came off. It's super slippery. Wading boots just add so much stability and grip and stuff. It's just essential to safety as well. If you're going to be fishing bigger water, I wouldn't go without wading boots. I mean, here if I fall over, yeah, rocks are going to hurt me, and it does hurt regardless of how big the river is, but I'm not putting myself in major trouble by slipping and sliding a bit. But on big rivers, bigger water, definitely a must. Waders, more about a seasonal thing. It's more about keeping you dry and warm. I don't really fish with waders in summer. I wet wade, but even in summer sometimes it can get quite cold. So waders can just be more dry and comfortable. Dry fly eat, perfect. Oh, that was just perfect to watch. Stunning dry eat. I love this stream, it's so good. And I've left my net somewhere with the last fish. Damn. Okay, I'm gonna have to go and look for it. Typical, that's, if you follow my videos, net issues is a common thing. I'm just gonna let this one go from the hook. There we go. Continue fishing. I think there will be more in there. Dry my dry fly. That's awesome. Great successful day so far. And that's the beauty about fly fishing. I mean, coming to here, the small stream, it's easy to just go and chase big fish, but a beautiful, pleasant day like this. I mean, I haven't even gone properly 50, 60 meters from where I started. I've caught a bunch of fish. They've been dry fly. It's beautiful. It's relaxing. Birds chirping. That's just stunning. Why so many people love fly fishing. What else is there to mention? Oh, there we go, another fish before I get a chance to mention anything. Oh, pop, jumped off. Little one jumped off. Well, I've only fished probably about 50 meters of the stream. You've seen me catch a whole bunch of trout on a 20-year-old fly rod. I hope you enjoyed this session. I hope you found that useful, even though my thoughts were probably a bit all over the place. And if you have any questions in the comments, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.